So when did you meet your husband?
In February of last year.
Okay, wow.
So, like, it's just crazy because, you know, we met and we knew pretty soon we were going to get married. We knew, I think both of us have talked about it and come to the consensus that both of us knew pretty much within the first month that we were going to get married to each other.
Oh, wow.
Which for some people, they would say, that's not a good decision. You know, you need to take more time. And we did take more time. Like, we didn't get engaged till we were dating for like 7 months, right? Because, you know, and Mallory's still like, oh my gosh, that's so soon. But I seriously think that, you know, our world likes to complicate marriage. It likes to complicate a lot of things, but it likes to complicate marriage in particular because our society is not focused on families. You know, they're trying to really, as much as possible, dissuade people from getting married because, you know, it's a culture of death. It's a culture that doesn't like children. And so why would they want you to get married if they don't want children? You know, they know that that's pretty much a natural outcome of marriage. And so I think that there's a lot of things in our society that are kind of overcomplicated. And, you know, marriage is the devotion of two people to each other for life. And this devotion is to lead each other to heaven, right? And if you have two people that are and it's rare for you to find this so quick, but if you have two people that are just completely open and honest with each other, love each other so much, and have the same goals in life, then why wait? So that's just kind of my perspective. So we started dating in February, at the end of February, beginning of March. Well, you know, actually, okay, I think I met him in January, but we started dating at the end of February, beginning of March. And then we dated throughout the spring, throughout the summer, and then into the fall. And then we got engaged in fall, and we got married in December, which was beautiful. I loved having a Christmas wedding. It was so stressful planning a Christmas wedding because it was around the holidays and everything was going on. But like, in retrospect, it was so beautiful because it's like everyone's just in such a festive spirit already that your wedding is just even more beautiful. So
yeah. Oh, well, my parents had a December wedding too. Theirs is December 12th. And my mom said she wouldn't change it for a thing. She loved having a Christmas wedding.
Also, I've heard like the two opinions. I've heard people say like there's like 2 months of the year that people are like, don't get married. Like, I don't remember what the other one is. Maybe July, maybe like the middle of the summer. But they're like December, like it's overwhelming, like it's during the holidays. But I don't know. I like, my life is not stress-free, and I like doing things like big, you know, and like, I don't know, crazy. But I think it was a great choice for us. But, you know, for someone who's already stressed about your wedding, like, maybe don't do it in December.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you looked absolutely beautiful. It looked like it was a fun time. And I want to comment on what you said about the getting engaged within 7 months. I have a friend who, she might be listening. Shout out to Kiara. I have a friend who met, because we all met in a Bible study together, got engaged, and got married to someone within 6 months. So, and they're still together. Yeah. She just had her third baby. They're still together. I think that I agree with what you said. Like, if it's for sure, like, you know for a fact, why wait? I do think sometimes, like, I don't know, if you're a Christian, I definitely don't see the point of, like, wait, if you know for a fact. I don't see the point of dating. There are times where I'm kind of like, practically speaking, I don't know if I think I could get married within the year. I think you guys did fine. Like, the February to December, I think that's fine. The 6 months is that's a little fast because I think I'd just be a little nervous. Yeah. Especially, like, you know, you got to do premarital eventually. Yes. So, like, you know, within the 6 months, when do you start your premarital? Yeah. But, you know. So there's a thing that I will say to that because I also like have a very strong opinion, and, you know, sometimes it's a little bit confusing when I'm talking about it. But so I also am like super, super against getting married just because you want to be married. And I know so many people who, unfortunately, that happens to so many Christians and Catholics particularly, because there's like, you know, little cultures inside of like
communities. And I think that inside of the Catholic, especially like more traditional Catholic or traditional Christian communities, is, get married either right out of college or right out of high school, even, get married like right away for young women in particular. And there's that pressure to get married before you do anything with your life. You know what I mean? Like I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I've seen that with a lot of people. And unfortunately, what that leads to is that the first person that ever really shows interest in you, or that you ever show interest in, you get married to. And I'm sorry, but I don't think that the saying that, like, a Catholic who marries a Catholic is going to have a good marriage, or a Christian who marries a Christian is going to have a good marriage. I don't think it works like that. I think there's a lot more to it. I think that there's like physical chemistry matters a lot. Interest, like shared interests matter a lot. Shared beliefs obviously matter a lot. And so I think that this, like, there's got to be a balance, because where I was in life and where Cam was in life was, we were both, like, I can say this honestly, and none of even my close friends would disagree with me. We were both very happily single. Like, we were both very, very happily single, and could have stayed that way for a couple years, and that was very important, because we both were like, we were finding fulfillment from other things in our lives. We loved our jobs. We had very like fast-paced social lives. And when we talked about it, because I was like, it's interesting because, I was happy before I met you, and he said the same thing. Like, I was happy before, like, it's not like you made me happy. It's that we fulfilled each other, we fulfilled each other, and we made each other's lives better. So I think, like, advice to anyone who's like, oh my gosh, like, that's so cool. Like, I want to get married in like a short time span, like, I want to be married now. Like, that should not be the goal. It should not be the goal to be married in a short time span. It should be the goal to be content with yourself and be content with God, and then find a husband, or find a wife. Like, it should not be the goal to like just get married. My goal was never to like just get married. Obviously, I wanted to have a family, but I wanted to do it within God's timing, and God's timing for me just happened to be very short. So that's, I think that's kind of like a better, like, long way of saying it. Like, I don't advocate, I don't say like the minute you get in a relationship with someone, you should get married. We were also, both of us had great jobs, and we were like financially stable. Like, there were a lot of things that just kind of worked perfectly, and we just met at the perfect time in order to do that. If we had met 2 years ago, I don't think we would have gotten married in such a short time frame. You know what I mean?
Okay, sorry. I think it cut out for a teensy second, but from what I heard, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
And I want to say also too, you're right about, especially like down here in the South, and just in the Southern Christian community, I'm the only person, except for one, I have one friend group where we're all single. Out of that friend group, everyone else I know is married, and a lot of people have kids. So like, there is this pressure to just meet someone, like, hurry up and meet someone, and who you marry is, aside from accepting Jesus as your savior, is the most important decision that you'll ever make. So you should not take it lightly. I think that because of like all the pressures and stuff, people do. I think you're right on that. People take it, well, I just gotta marry whoever, and it's like, that's not important. I'm sorry, it is too important to do that. It's too important.
Exactly.
This is also the father for girls, the father of your children, and you don't want a bum. You don't want someone
not
mean.
At all.
Yeah, like, it's so like, this is a big decision, and I agree. Like, we cannot, you can't just make it willy-nilly just because you really want to be married. And the other thing I want to say, you said, about contentment. I do think that's really important, and I know people hate to hear that. I know I used to hate to hear that too, but I wasn't content. That's why I hated it. Like, now I feel very content. Like, it is what it is kind of where I'm at. Like, I know what God has called me to do. I'm just focusing on that. And if someone comes along, they come along. If they don't, then I still know I'm giving God glory, blah, blah, blah. So my point, though, is, like, it's really important to get to a place like that. I don't want to say that, because when you get there, that's when you'll meet someone, because that's not true. I know people who are desperate.
No, because I was there for like 2 years, like, it wasn't that I got there, and then it's like, And then it's like you meet someone immediately. No, like God has called you to do certain things while you're single. Like being single is a vocation in and of itself. And I fully believe that. And I fully believe that if I had been in a relationship when I was 18, I would not have been able to accomplish the things that I think that God called me to accomplish. So I admire people so much who are single and content, because it's so hard and it's so rare. And I would say it's harder than getting married. I mean, I don't know that it's harder than being married for 10 years, right? Because I haven't. But it is harder because we're, as humans, we naturally want that love and we want that affection. And it is a sacrifice to just like do what God is calling you to do and be alone in doing it. And that's like one of the most beautiful things ever.
Yeah. No, you're so right. Like, because I think people think, oh yeah, I'll be content, and then next week God will send that man. No, that could happen, but that might not be it. So you shouldn't be content so that you can meet someone. You should be content because that is what God has called you to do. And at the end of the day, like, we're not in charge. Like, God's timing is perfect. If we could make the decisions ourselves, I'm sure 95% of us talking right now that are or 5% of us listening would be married if we can make the decision ourselves. But God's timing is so much better, and that's what's more important. That's the most important thing. And one last thing I want to say about that too is I think it's so important to be busy, and I don't mean in like the be a busybody. Like, I mean like be busy and like doing things, being. And that's one thing, like, this past year for myself, I have moved more into contentness. Now, obviously, I have some days where I'm like, dang, this battle, this struggle will be nice to go through with somebody. But for the most part, I'll say 99.9% of the time, I am pretty content. And what has helped is, like, I have kept myself busy with good friendships. Like, even my friends that are married and have kids, I do try to keep up with them. Like, I try to still be in their life, like having good friendships. And then another thing is like having something that you're interested in. For example, this podcast. This isn't my full-time job right now. So this isn't like this is, I wouldn't say it's a hobby because I take it very seriously, but for lack of a better word, it's more of a hobby. It keeps me I have to do research. Like the topics we're talking about today, I had to look them up. And I feel as if this is a calling in the sense of having this conversation. Like, this is giving me life. Like, you have to be involved in things like that. You can't just sit at home upset that you're single, scrolling, looking at everybody else's relationships. Like, I was talking to a friend about this. She was, we were being very candid and I was being very honest with her. I said, so she used to send me, almost every day, just different relationship stuff and like different prayers and things like that. And I was like, personally, like, I had to unfollow, like, sometimes I had to unfollow like really big mom accounts or like really big marriage accounts. I love the LeBrants. I can't follow them. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just can, sometimes you can't. I had to unfollow because it just wasn't making me feel good about myself. So like, even if and she was like, well, it's kind of encouraging. I'm like, if you finish scrolling or if you get off someone's page and you start crying, is it really encouraging you? Like, that's where I was. Like, I was at a place about 2-3 years ago where like I would look at different people and there were some Christians who and they weren't doing this intentionally. Like, it's just where I was. They would post about their life and all these things, and like I would leave just so sad, like, oh, I want this so bad, and I'm just so sad,
Yeah.
So then it's no longer helpful for you. So you got to get off of that stuff. You really have to find something that, like, figure out what God has called you to do and just do that. Like, that's what you should be focusing on. That's where you should put all your attention on.
Oh, for sure.
And then when the person comes along, like Sav and Cam, when the person comes along, you already have your foundation, you already have other things. So you don't want your whole world to be your spouse. That to me is that's another conversation.
And that's an interesting thing to navigate. And I mean, I could talk about this for forever. That's an interesting thing to navigate because when we first met, I was so busy. I was traveling every week. Like, I was seriously traveling every week. And I was, for the first 5 months that we were dating. So like for a lot of our relationship, I was incredibly busy and I was just, I would get so emotional. I would just like cry. I'd be like, I don't want to do this. but it's important to see how he reacts. You know, if he says, oh, just quit everything, stay home with me. Like, I don't think that's healthy. I honestly don't think that's healthy, because I think that can lead to an isolation of you, your friends, what's important to you, your work, everything, right?
Idolizing, making that person your idol, making that person your God. I have seen that in relationships. I've seen women quit everything, stop being friends, and their spouse, their boyfriend is their God. And that's, you can't be there either. That's not a good spot to be.
And so he, you know, every time I would say, because I'm fine admitting, I would get it in my head that, like, oh, I'm not going to this. Like, I can't do it. Like, I can't be away from him for this long, you know, because it'd be like week-long trips. And he would, every time, he'd drive me to the airport and he'd be like, no, this is what you love to do. Like, this is what you're going to do. Like, I'm always going to be here. Like, you know, like, we want to get married to each other, but we need to both have individual goals as well.
Yes.
And so that's been something that's been really hard for me, but I think it's really important, because if, like, the healthiest relationships that I see are when both the woman and the man are very, very motivated, not necessarily in the same thing. Like, obviously you're going to have the same, like, big goals in life, but when you have your own hobbies, you have your own friends, you know, you have that, because God meant for us to be in community, and that's whether or not you're in a marriage, you know, that's whether or not you're married. And when you start dating and get married and just isolate yourself, that's when people become unhappy, because you're not meant to solely fulfill each other.
Yeah. Well, that's the relationship advice segment. Come back for more relationship advice from Mal and Sav. No, but I'm so happy for you. You seem so happy. You're glowing. I'm really happy for you. And I know that
Thank you, Mal,
wanted to be married and have kids. And like, I love that. I love when my friends, I know they wanted to be married and they have kids, and that's just how it happens. That's so beautiful.
And it's not like, the thing is too, I had a hard time admitting, sorry, I could talk about this for forever. This is the last thing.
No, you're good.
I had a hard time admitting when I was single that I wanted to be married and have kids, because I was so like, my life is great. Like, I don't know. I think about that a lot. You know, a lot of people just like go through their day. I found that it's great to be like intentional and think about like particular things in your life that you love. Like, throughout my whole life, I've thought that. And so I'd always be like, man, like, my life is really great. And I'd have a hard time admitting to people that, oh, but someday I want to be married and have kids. Like, it's just like any other goal in life, right? It's not shameful to admit that, right? But then also, you know, admit that it might take 10 years. Like, it's a natural human desire. Most women, I would say, probably want to be married and have kids. That doesn't mean that you can't be completely fulfilled where you are in life. So that's something that I'm just very passionate about. But anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, it is okay to want to be married. I want to be married. Like I said, I'm content where I am, but I do desire to be married and have children. Like, that is something that, you know, I've wanted my entire life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it should be okay to admit that. Because also I think when you don't admit that you want that, then you're also kind of like, that's the other side of the unhealthiness of it. Because acting like you don't want it, then I don't know. And there were times, like, I was like you too. There were times, especially this past year, where I was like, I don't know if I want it, but like, no, I want it. Oh,
you know,
not even I don't know if I want it, but like, I was acting like I didn't want it, but like, I want it, obviously. But it's okay it's nothing wrong with wanting it. You just don't want to be on the unhealthy side of like making it an idol. That's another thing too, especially us Christian women. Like, sometimes we make marriage an idol. Most times we make marriage an idol, I'd argue. Yeah.
Yeah. And one last quote that I thought of that I was going to share last time that you were talking, that I heard from one of my favorite authors, Karen Kingsbury. It's just the quote, run towards God and then look back and see who's running behind you. Ooh. And I love that, because it encompasses so many things. It's saying run towards God, right? With your life, honor God. But don't just do that. Don't just do that, because then you're never going to see when someone comes into your life, right? Keep an eye out. Like, look and see who's following you. You know, look not necessarily who's following you, but who's following God as well, you know? And so I just love that quote. Run towards God and then look back and see who's following behind you.
Love that. Well, we have a lot of stories to get into.
Oh yeah.
I'm really glad that we got to catch up, and I'm glad. I honestly think that like a lot of things you said are super important, especially for the young girls who, you know, desire to be married or like they're dating someone. I really think what you said was like, because you know, people look up to married couples, and even though, you know, I do hate when, you know, a couple's been married for 5 minutes. Here is our new YouTube channel. Come join us. But I do think there's something to say, like what you were saying about dating. I do think new married couples have a lot to say about dating, because you have to get to the marriage spot. You have to start dating. Anyway, that's now I'm like saying more about the topic. Okay,
we could spend a whole podcast talking about this. Maybe a different time.
No, literally. So let us